Welcome to the final episode of Series 82, everyone. This month we have Lawlor and Panny Lines with us to go over their remarkable post-apocalyptic mech RPG called Salvage Union. This episode we finish up our discussion about the process and dive into some wonderful fanfic for our characters. But before we get to that, we do have some calls to action, maybe, coming up after the show. Here's what to expect. If you heard this last episode, it has not changed much. Things have been very busy for me lately these last few weeks, and I think that it is finally starting to simmer down a bit. But due to that, and due to being quite late on these episodes, we're going to be foregoing the calls to action section at the end of the episode, just for this last episode here in the series. Check out the show notes for links to Salvage Union and any other potential announcements, or check out our Patreon at patreon.com/charactercreationcast to help us out immensely. We hope to be back on track for the next series coming in just a few days. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone. With all of that out of the way, enjoy the show.
A little bit like what you found this process to be like when you were kind of playtesting some of that, you know, especially as you look at players who come from playing other mech games that are more on the crunchy side as far as like customization and kind of things like that. Like what kind of feedback you got from people and how that played into this final version.
Yeah, so we did a lot of playtesting, to be honest. Like we did multiple rounds of playtesting on the Discord with different variants of the game, and we had loads of feedback forms, which we gave out and got lots of varied feedback about. So it was a good process. We learned a lot and we iterated a lot. In terms of kind of the crunchier players, I mean, yeah, there was a couple of things that kept coming up, like maybe when you think about it, a lot of it made sense. Like the crunchy players wanted like more specificity, which was like, you know, in terms of like more specific ranges. They were all kind of obsessed with grids. To this day, they're obsessed with, if you go to our Discord, there's so many like homebrew like grid systems.
There has to be some point where you're like, I appreciate your feedback, but that isn't what this is. So
yeah, there's a bit of that, and to be like, the game had already come out, but a guy played one of the sessions we ran, probably one of the launch sessions, probably, and he'd spent like ages designing like. He'd not played the game yet, but he just sat down with it and he redesigned it so it worked with like a grid and mini system effectively. And then he played a session with me where I just run it by the book with the abstract ranges and theatre of the mind. And afterwards he went, oh, you know, it did work a lot better that way. I kind of wish I didn't spend all that time making,
and you're like, funny enough,
a grid system.
Like, funny enough, we had that too, and we scrapped it. So
yeah.
We also thought about playing it with minis, and
yeah, we did.
Turns out.
Yeah. So but yeah. I found that and overthinking things a bit, which was, I don't know, yeah, thinking there was rules in the game that didn't actually exist. So we had to, but you know, that all being said, we had really fantastic playtesters, and we're really appreciative of them and all the feedback. And it's very hard. It's very hard going through feedback and having to sort of decide, you know, is this. Yeah, like, because all feedback is valid. It's all based on people's experiences, obviously. But you still have to make decisions as to, like, okay, but is this feedback that we want to take on board for the game? Is a direction we want to go in? Or do we, or what aspects to it? Because again, like I said, players aren't really wrong with feedback necessarily. I think it's always important to listen and to take that on board. They're just but they're obviously coming from their own perspective as a player and what they like and stuff like that. So it's about taking it on board and listening and working through it. And, it's a very, it involved long process, I think, as well. It's quite,
When we were listening to the feedback, I think the most important thing we had to do that was, and probably what everybody should be doing if you're designing a game, is to have a design document with the goals and the aims, because then you can take that feedback, because learning what feedback to ignore is just as important as learning to what feedback to listen to. And having something that you can refer to and say, right, okay, cool, well, if we made this change, would it reinforce our design goals for the game, or would it undermine them? And then that's what helps you make that decision of, okay, well, we wanted a simple to play sort of theatre of the mind game, so adding a grid system undermines that. So it's something that we should try our best not to include, even if it has the effect of making it more accessible to somebody who wants to have a grid because it's easier to, map positioning in the mind. Like, it's a valid concern. Like, if you're, because some people do struggle with, like, visualization and, like, where is everything? Oh, I'm not sure where. We keep talking about this thing is over here, but I'm not sure what that means. And that's a valid concern. But obviously, it's once you start down that road, that's like I say, it can quickly then just turn into not what it was meant to be.
It's super interesting to me to look at, like, okay, what point do you say, I really appreciate that feedback, but that isn't what this game is. Like, that's not what we want to do here.
I think as I said, design document makes sense for that, and and just sticking to that. I think one hard thing with if you do a lot of playtesting in particular, like we did, and we iterated the game a lot. So one thing I found out, players, I mean, perhaps unsurprisingly, they don't like it when you take stuff out. That was like the stress system, for example. I think it was definitely the correct decision to remove that, because it was overcomplicating things. For example, players didn't know, like, should my pilot be doing this reroll and adding to their stress, or because I'm in my mech, but how does this count, and how does this my pilot, because your pilot would, like, they might, like, run away if they got overstressed and failed, but then it's like, are they running away on foot? Like, it bogged things down a bit, and I think it was the right decision to get rid of it. But then when we got rid of it, a lot of players were like, oh, but that was a thing that gave me a reroll that I liked. Like, and all the feedback was like, put stress back, and it was like, oh, I know. But then players who didn't know about it didn't miss it, if you know what. So that's always a tricky thing as well. Nobody gave us feedback after we removed stress, so it was like, I feel like this game really needs a stress mechanic. Like, So,
did you miss it when it was gone? No. Okay, great.
So I think that's tricky as well, and you have to stick to your guns a bit, and it's a bit of intuition really, and a bit of practice.
I think ultimately at some point you just have to say, well, I'm the decision maker, and I guess is it again, it's open ended. It really is hard to say this is right, this is wrong. That's super intriguing to me. So how do you feel like the process of character creation kind of informs players about what playing the game is going to be like? How does it sort of set expectations for what's going to happen when you play the game?
So I think, with Salvage Union, it's kind of a lot we've been discussing in terms of it's a fairly quick, accessible, and intuitive character creation, I feel, but with a good degree of, like, customization. So I think hopefully that tells players that the gameplay experience will be as sort of fast, accessible, quite punchy, but with an interesting enough curve and like interesting enough options during play, both in terms of different, generally like a lot of agency and sandbox sort of nature of play, and also in terms of the stuff you can pick up on a more on a more kind of meta level. I think not on a meta level, on a very more specific level. A big part of a character creation in Salvage Union is looking at all your abilities and all of your specific, all the specific toys on your mech. And I think as a result of that, you're already imagining, how I'm going to use my Eggs Mayhem module to hack into corporate databases to get songs or whatever, or I'm going to use my, I'm going to use my Hadronic Crusher to crush and salvage, and that's going to be fun. So you're already hopefully imagining what you can do with stuff before you've even started.
Plus you're working with salvage points like right away. At character creation, you're like, this is the core like cycle of play of I get more salvage, I upgrade, I get new things. I get more salvage, I upgrade, I get new things. And it feels like that's kind of very forward in the character creation. The abilities that you get, and then the dealing with the salvage, and the whole game being about salvaging stuff out there for you and your community.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, actually. Like, it was very specifically in character creation, because that was a change we made, because initially in character creation with the mechs, you just built a mech. You didn't have a scrap limit, so you just built a mech and picked whatever systems and modules you wanted for like your first mech. But then we changed it to having that scrap total, because it informs players how the salvaging works and how the rest of the game is going to kind of work. But you're going to have this pool of scrap, and you're going to have to build your mech out of that pool of scrap in some form or another. So yeah, that was a really important change to like reiterate that concept. But
also, when you have the leftover scrap, like that just all goes on your crawler pool. So it also then reinforces that thing of the scrap that you have is shared. It's not, I have, 10 scrap and I have 5 scrap and, all that. It's like, we have this. And, it's that sort of it's the union part of Salvage Union, right? Like you're a collective. And the idea is that it's not supposed to be specifically distributed to individual characters. It's just, this is what's left over. Right. Okay, cool. That's why the crawler sheet's so important in terms of centralizing all of that gain, because and inevitably people do, because we all live in a hyper individualistic sort of capitalist society, so it's very ingrained. So people do want to have that individual level of control. But it sort of helps to break that down a little bit. And to go back to what Panny was saying as well, I think the other thing is, like you're saying, when you're looking, because when we were designing it, we were talking about the concept of 10 seconds of fun. If you've heard the idea, it's like, most of a session, you might not be 100% engaged, right? Sessions are long, you can't be. But if you've had like that 10 seconds where that little combo, so like I was saying, I had the Mechapult and the personal recreation device and the zoom optics. If that kicks off and it happens, and then I get this really good result because of those decisions that I made earlier, you get that moment, and then at the end of the session, you're like, yeah, no, that was really fun because I had my moment where everything worked.
Oh yeah.
Everything else can go badly the rest of the session. You still come away from it feeling like, yeah, no, but I had my moment in the spotlight, and that was great.
Yeah,
because,
you get that huge dopamine hit for 10 seconds. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the memorable stuff that you get from RPGs like that, is when you have those like huge moments. You're like, wow, that was such a cool moment. I don't remember half of the rest of the session. But this will stick with me for life.
Yeah.
Like that one little cheap thing that you bought because you were like, oh, I guess I've got to fill a slot, so I'll get a chaff launcher. But then there's this enormous missile barrage comes in, and this is just like, oh, wait, no, I can just counter that. I didn't think I was going to use this, but I'm going to. And it's like, yeah, cool. You all survive that. Now what do you do? And you're like, okay, well, we run away or whatever. And it's like, you got to do that because of that thing. Like, I remember I played that second edition D&D thing, and there was just one moment where we finally figured out the puzzle, but we were all dying, and then one of the characters rolled a nat 20, and it was that was just the moment where everyone at the table goes, oh, and it's, and trying to facilitate those moments, I think, is really important, because the more of those moments you can have, the more fun, quote unquote, the game feels.
Exactly.
I definitely think you get the sense that like that collaboration part of it is, and that community part of it is important. Just looking at like the crawler sheet and looking at that, like we have to have 5 scrap. If we don't have that, like things go badly for everyone. So even if I'm like, I have 4 and you only have 1 or whatever, it's like, it's still, I need to give you that because like it will impact everybody. In a negative way if we don't get there. And similarly, like it can go well for everyone if we're able to upgrade things and do all that kind of stuff too.
yeah, it was a tough game, tough part of the game design over. Well, ironic, yeah, the salvage part was hard to design in terms of crafting system, and the union part was quite hard to design as well in terms of the communal part, the communal aspects of the game.
The two hardest parts were the salvage and the union.
Yeah, those were the really difficult parts to design.
The mech game bit was easy, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should have called it mech game. That would have been great. That would have been really easy to do.
The SEO on that would be brilliant, though, wouldn't it?
I was just going to say, like, the marketing on that, like.
Would it backfire though? Like, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, what do you think is one of the biggest flaws of character creation in Salvage Union, and what is one of your favorite parts?
So as we were saying a bit earlier, you end up seeing a lot of the flaws. Like when you go back through it, there's minor quibbles where, like, I don't know, like the hydraulic crusher maybe is a bit too good because it kind of combines the chainsaw and the rigging arm, but it's a little bit cheaper. It's balanced by being like unwieldy, which is a sort of narrative trait, but sometimes GMs just kind of ignore that or overcompensate. So it's a weird balancing thing. That's quite.
Doesn't it take like 5 slots or something too, though? Like, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's a fairly minor thing. I wouldn't say that's a glaring flaw. Yeah. For me, I guess potentially. I mean, in terms of the biggest amount of feedback we've had, and I'm not sure if we could change it, but like, so the game doesn't have stats in a traditional sense. So you do have stats, system slots are a stat, HP is a stat, but there's not strength, agility, dexterity, charisma, etc. or equivalent. Right. And we've had a lot of feedback where some people are like completely bounced off of a game because of that. Some people are like, I can't role play in this game because I don't have any stats to role play with, which doesn't fully make sense to me, but I do understand where they're coming from in that respect. Yeah. The stats do help you inform your character. Like we were saying earlier about Shadow Dark. You roll that negative stat, it suddenly gives you an idea about your character. So finding a way to include that somehow, even in a minor way, I don't know, maybe would have helped on board more people or got a bit more accessible. But then it does have this knock-on effect in terms of complexity, which is quite difficult to balance in that when you start, you add stats and then you have to reference stats with other things. And then do the mechs have stats as well as the pilot? If your pilot has like a shooting stat or equivalent of perception, does that affect your mech, or does your mech have its own individualized shooting stat? Like there's a million.
Can you show me on the grid how far I can shoot too?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. And so that's what we were trying to avoid with all of that. But it's valid, and I don't know. Yeah, it's something I do think about a lot. Like, would including.
See, more games just need roleplay stats that have no mechanical benefit aside from teaching you like how charismatic your character is, how agile and deft they are, how clumsy they are.
Yeah, maybe.
Just role-playing prompts and everything, all the mechanics stay the same.
You just need like a little Mad Lib, like I am agile.
Well, this is what Quest had actually, like the character sheet in Quest is actually they literally have prompts, right? Which people also like crazy hated because they were like,
it's not a number.
A lot of the feedback was, well, yeah, because it was like, this is baby's first role playing game. It was kind of seen as, this has been designed as like a family friendly game, not a serious game. And
that bugs me so much. Oh, okay.
But this is the thing, because it's like it's actually a really good intro to role playing. It is it's actually good for, I think, a lot of people, even people who've been playing certain role playing games for a long time, like particularly crunchy things like 5e or whatever. And I know 5e is seen as medium crunch, but I've seen it as fairly crunchy. To take a step back from that and actually not rely so much about what's written on your character sheet and start relying about what your image of your character is in your head,
But how will I know if I'm better at talking than Ryan is?
Yeah,
I just need to know if I'm better than him. Like,
exactly. That's why you need those narrative points just to say.
Am I winning? Am I winning RPG?
You joke, but I do think that genuinely is it. Like, it is.
No, there's definitely a level of that, and I think it's about finding a different kind of fun, because I think people look at sort of more rules light games like it's simpler, it's for a younger audience, it's for newer players, rather than looking at it as something of like, this is a different way of playing a game.
Yeah.
Like they're both equally valid, equal levels of enjoyment. It's just you're looking for different things.
Yeah.
Arguably as well, it's you could say it's for more advanced role players. If you look at the term of role players like an improv game, where it's about improvising character and characterization and narrative, then you would say that when you have a sheet that has a lot of information on it so that you can prod the buttons on that sheet and do all of those things, then that is actually for a beginner, because that's better for a beginner, because it means that they don't have to improv so much. They don't have to have that skill set where they can come up with something on the fly and roll it into character and do all of that stuff.
Right.
So arguably, is it more advanced role playing, or is it beginner role playing?
I think the difference is is the emphasis on role playing or game, and I think that's really kind of where that comes in.
Because either way, you're telling a story. One just has more dice rolls.
One is the story is kind of told by randomness. One is like narrative. And I think they're equally valid depending on what you want out of a game. And this goes back to my don't run everything in 5e. Not everything is for everyone. Not everything is supposed to do all the things equally, and that is okay. That's why we have lots of different games.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I think Quest is actually quite underrated. Like, it is genuinely a really well designed game, and it did do well for itself. And it got quite a sort of ardent follower base, but I think not as much has been done with it as potentially could have been. I think the fact we turned it into Salvage Union shows, I think, the versatility, the core behind the sort of core of the system. It was also designed for improv, effectively. Like, the designer wanted to make a game that was designed to emulate streams he'd seen. So like and it kind of makes sense. Like, you watch something like Critical Role and it looks incredible and amazing fun, but when you sit down to actually play D&D, and there's a lot there that you're not seeing, right? Like,
that is like a frustration I have. Is I'm like, that isn't D&D. Like, that's like, they're not. Yeah. They're playing D&D despite the rules.
Yes. There's a lot of improv. They work really well together. I think, to be fair, like, a lot of them, they've internalized a lot of the rules, so they're not having to constantly reference them, and they know when to ignore them as well. But you can't know when to ignore rules if you don't know the rules exist, and you have to go through that learning process. So Quest was about taking that and being like, no, what if you could just have that experience but not have to learn the entirety of the D&D rules set.
I think there's something to be said too for like elegance of design in knowing when to edit and pull back, and like having a system that still works despite not having tons of rules. Because I think there's one way of design of like, okay, I need all of these rules to work together, and definitely there's a lot of work put into that. But having a game that still follows a structure and still like kind of you can predict sort of where things are going to go, even though you don't have tons of rules to put people on a track, is a difficult thing to design.
Well, we were talking in a break about MDA, right? Mechanics, Dynamics, Aesthetics, which was a game design paper written by Robin Hunicke and a few other people. It came out of MIT, and it's available on the internet. I encourage anyone who's interested in games design to read it. It's only a few pages, A4, so it's quite short. But its core premise is taking a view of games, and you've got three different sort of elements. So you've got mechanics, you've got dynamics, and you've got aesthetics. And aesthetics is kind of like the gameplay experience, right? So what experience do you want people to be having at the table? And dynamics is how people interact with those rules, with mechanics to generate that aesthetic. And then the mechanics are the underpinning. Now, most game designers tend to approach things from a mechanics first perspective. It's like, oh, okay, cool. I had this cool idea for a dice system. Let's make a game out of it. Rather than looking at sort of, okay, well, I want people to have this experience. How do I get people to do this kind of experience? And okay, cool. So if I'm writing rules that's going to encourage that kind of player behavior, then these are the mechanics that I need to have. And I think, a lot of people have it sort of, the wrong way around, because you kind of go, okay, well, I have these like cool rules. Let's do these, and hopefully it sort of generates this. But if you don't look at it backwards, then you just end up with sort of, it's kind of garbage in, garbage out, right?
Right.
If you look at it from, okay, well, we want to have this kind of gameplay experience, and this is, I think, where Quest is actually more successful at what it's trying to do than people necessarily give it credit for, is they went, okay, well, we want to have this kind of like real improv thing. So all of its rules are designed about sort of encouraging that level of improv. There was one complaint we got on Salvage Union, particularly as one of the Hauler abilities, folk song. And we've had a few complaints about it. Is like, what all this skill does is I pay points and I can sing a song. Like, what's that? I could just do that anyway. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's there because it encourages you to do the singing of the song. Because as soon as someone's like, okay, cool, I'm gonna sing a folk song and get these people on side, and then it's like, okay, cool, like, how did your song sound? And then you get that moment at the table where that happens, and then all of a sudden, you're having this moment, you're having your 10 seconds of fun, like, bring this to the fore. And it encourages you to do that. Whereas if you were to look at that from a sort of more mechanics perspective, and you're like, okay, cool, so how do we get people on side? It's like, okay, cool, well, you have this ability, so I guess you spend the points and it happens. And then you get the people on side. But it's not working in the same fashion if you think about it the other way around, right?
Yeah, I think definitely having abilities and having rules that sort of encourage you to do certain things really, kind of emphasizes like this is the direction that the game could go in, and can give you ideas of like, if I was looking at my abilities or whatever, I don't think I personally would ever come to the table and be like, what, I bet a song would help. But if I took that ability, I'd be like, what, let's sing a song.
To use it.
Exactly. And it sort of encourages you to do those things. And I look at like mechanics that are meant to build tension, and it's like you can kind of tell a story and build tension sort of organically, but there are, rules where it's like, okay, if you do these, like the Jenga tower or the, like it creates a whole different feel than saying like roll a die and see if things are tense.
Yeah, I think the stress system in Alien by Free League is actually really good at that as well, because it's that thing where you get extra dice, so you're more likely to succeed, but also more likely to fail. Like, it's really nice
there's more
tension.
Chances for it to go well and more chances for it to go bad. And it,
exactly.
So
like, you have this ramping thing where, and you have this like when you play it. Everything goes like well, and then it goes really well, and then really, really well, but you're waiting for the sort of the house of cards to collapse, right? And it's as a tension builder, it's so effective.
It's a great mechanic.
And then you have to really make decisions of like, okay, am I going to do that thing, knowing that like I've been steadily increasing the risk of failure too. Like I'm getting better at it, but it's like, so like maybe I decide to just not do it because it's like, ooh, is it worth it?
Do we dial it back?
Right.
They play with that. This funny in The Walking Dead by Free League. They have a similar mechanic, but it's just every time you fail the stress test, a zombie just bites you. Like basically, like a zombie just appears and attacks you. Like just taking that and being like, it's just a zombie every time. It's a zombie. I just really liked, but then it does emulate in the show where they're like kind of a bit stressed. They're wandering about. They forget to, watch their rear or like, I don't know, get their zombie stick out, and suddenly there's a zombie because they messed up, and it kind of emulates that in a good way. So it's it's a good mechanic, and they play with it in interesting ways. But I do like that, just suddenly zombie every time.
So good.
More games need suddenly zombie.
I completely agree.
Keeps you on your toes.
It really does. Nobody talks about that fun part of a zombie apocalypse, right? Like, really just keeps you spry and alert.
Yep.
The positives. Yeah.
Yes. Gotta hope for the best, right? Or what was our motto? Guys.
Yeah.
do your best.
Do your best.
Do your best.
Yeah. Applies to so many situations.
Yeah. This is our favorite part of the show, which we call our fan fiction section. because the beauty of this show is that we make characters and then we never ever play games with them. So we get to say what happens. So I want to discuss like this group of people. Why this group of people? Why a laser light show?
Why?
I mean,
and a catapult or whatever. Like, why?
Yeah.
Just a big question for you now is why?
We're a group with a particular set of skills, and
Are we?
I mean, technically, right? Well, okay. We're competent for level 1.
Great.
I gotta say, yeah. We're a little quirky.
No,
but I can see us getting the job done.
I think for me and for Dingle, I mean, again, it's that, my 10 seconds of fun would be just rolling on that mechapult table, and seeing what happens. It's that emergent narrative. And I would hope that my mech would probably blow up at some point, almost definitely. And that would probably blow up somebody else's mech too. And I think in Salvage, that's actually a good thing, because... So just go back to that previous question for a second. The biggest flaw of character creation, I think, in Salvage is that people get too attached to the mechs that they build. I think that's actually
fair.
That people have a genuine issue with leveling up and then being like, well, the game kind of demands that you upgrade. So sometimes part of building something that's fragile or kind of chaotic and is likely to explode with disastrous consequences is that it kind of then forces some kind of change in the gameplay, some kind of narrative growth in terms of like the character. And it's like, you play chaotic Dingle who's like, a bit unaware and a bit sort of, former hermit sort of trying to integrate in, but obviously then can grow into that role and change as a character and not just be this same initial vision. And
I can definitely see a story there of like growing more within the community and, like the potential of like losing your mech, like as a hermit sort of person, like that is like, okay, now I have to be a part of the outside world even more. Like I've lost my one little space and
I think the real turning point for Dingle would be when they installed reactor safety protocols on a mech that they didn't want to have blow up. I think as soon as Dingle does that, it's like, okay, they're fully actualized human being now. They're stable for the first time in their life.
I think Diva, the first mission, the first mission could be anything, but as far as Diva's concerned, I think the first mission is like hacking into the Napster database, the Corpo, like finding the some sort of tap into the Corpo stronghold. And I think our ultimate arc, I feel like she wants to. I think she got like fired from her Corpo job because of some like horrible bit of red tape. At the nightclub, and she wants to do a kind of screw you and set up her own techno nightclub, in maybe a mobile one in the wasteland. So I think that will be the arc of her trying to encourage everyone to join her dance troupe. And I'm sure there would be salvaging and other things in between, but
I'm sure the after party of each mission would be phenomenal.
True. That cantina is like amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
There's like a waiting queue outside the door to get in, and for the
much
30 people that live there.
Dismay. I just want to serve food. What are you doing?
There is a Tech6 module called the DDR module, which is dynamic diode rotation or something.
That's what it stands for.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Does it have to?
You could imagine it standing for something else. But...
it's the only thing it does is it lets your mech dance. But it's like crazy expensive. It's Tech6, but it lets your mech dance, and that's actually really complicated, as we've seen from Boston Dynamics. But
we need it.
I feel like that would be an end goal for.
It feels like a good end goal there. Yeah.
Just wants that DDR module.
It's a great module, yeah. I think that's the dream, yeah. DDR module and maybe a console mech, because we had a kind of console mech is like a kind of more of a mech suit. It's quite late game, and it's meant to be people size, so they use it for diplomatic.
Interesting.
It's like an Iron Man or Super Metroid thing, right? Yeah.
Effectively, yeah. And it can turn into a sphere.
That's so good.
Which is definitely not derivative. I think a console with a DDR module, that'd be the dream.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I like that a lot. I like that there's a lot of growth opportunity for our group. Because I like, as the engineer, I think I would go full in on engineer for this character and kind of get all the way to the legendary stuff. Because like, I think Spitfire is very much the I want to be the best at the engineering, and I want to be the best so I can make our crawler the best crawler, the best explorer class crawler in the world if we can, right? We want to do our upgrades. We want to get this thing to be able to hold more people, more community, pull people together into a welcoming place, that sort of stuff. But have fun while we do it.
That really makes sense. There's an end game ability, like legendary ability for the engineer, that lets you basically just ignore upkeep. I think it's called Tip Top Shape or something. Could be a good end point for you, like as long as you're on board. Because there's no upkeep. It's just good times, basically. Yeah.
Which would be phenomenal. Yeah. Exactly. I'd be very curious, because like with my cultist background, we're gonna encounter some kaiju at some point.
Yeah,
I guarantee. And that would be an interesting thing to see. Like, do we fight it? Do we let it go? Do we try to hide from it? What would we do in that sort of situation would be an interesting question to answer, I think.
Teach it to dance.
Interestingly, we were here first. There is, spoiler alert, by the way.
Kaiju dance off.
You can get a mini pet Biotitan.
You can,
You can,
amazing!
Yeah,
I really want to do a kaiju dance off. Down the line would be fun.
Yeah.
And then just watching the kaiju dance, and whoever wins gets to go away and be unharmed or whatever. I don't know.
They have to dance and the loser dies. The loser gets mech justice. What horrors are we creating? I mean, I can see us doing it
that one through, but yeah.
Dance for your lives.
Dance for your lives.
It's a dance for your lives, man. Good thing we have the DDR modules.
I think I want to start my own cult.
Ooh.
But I feel like I want this to be like a long-term character goal. Like, I know cultist is my background, but I think in my heart what I really want is to like build a cult. And so I think I want to spend a lot of time with my character just trying to figure out like what kind of cult do I want to build. Like I want to view it as like a community building activity.
So you were inspired by your cultist origins, and you're like, I can do better. I can make a better cult.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I even want to use it as origin so much as like I want this to be a key feature of my character, that it's just like I'm just really like determined that like there's so many cults out there, and I think they're missing something, but I could be the one to do it right. I think.
What would your cult be?
Well, I don't know, and I think that's something that my character has to spend some time kind of really. I think she tries a lot of things before she really is going to find her.
It's the cult of cultists.
Yeah. I mean, I really want to go on like an eat, pray, love cultist journey of like finding what my inner cult is.
That's how you start it. Is you got to find the other people out there that really want to be cultists but don't have direction.
Right. Because there are people out there just looking for a leader.
The true cult is the journey that you...
It's the friends we made along the way, right? The real cult is the friends we made along the way. And now I'm going to put that on a t-shirt.
It's a family-friendly show. Stop. Panny, stop. No, it's fine. I like that.
I feel like that's my journey.
That's very good. I do like this.
We should do some market research and find out what kind of cult people are looking for, though.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So we have community integration. We've got dancing robot. We've got kaiju dance battle. And starting a
death
cult.
Dance battle. I want to be really clear.
Yeah, kaiju dance battle to the death.
Nice. Not sure if that'll be.
This game has something for everyone.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. Skiller's got 6
That's
legs.
very good.
Anyway.
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, well, I think we can set that into our imaginations and move on to our final segment, the advancement discussion, and take it up a level.
Take it up a level. Take it up a level.
So in this segment, we cover how character advancement and character growth work in the game. So we kind of keep touching on it, but sort of officially, how do characters advance in this system? And then mechanically, kind of what does that look like for them?
So there's you've got 2 main ways of advancing, because you've got 2 character sheets, effectively your pilot and your mech. Your pilot primarily advances through downtime. They get training points, and they can spend those training points to get new abilities, and slowly as the game progresses they'll unlock more and more and more, and when they've unlocked 6 core class abilities, and when their Union Crawler is of the right level, which is 3 to 4 for advanced abilities, and then 5 to 6 for legendary abilities. They can advance further, so they can advance into either the advanced version of their class. So a hacker can become like an advanced hacker and get access to really powerful hacking abilities like the Trojan Horse, which can just take control of another mech. Or they can advance into what we call a hybrid class, which is effectively a combination of 2 classes. So there's like the Cyborg, which is like a hacker, I think a hacker engineer is the hacker soldier. Sorry, is the split there, and either the soldier or the hacker can advance into the hybrid, and then they get a whole host of unique abilities that are kind of related to that concept as well.
Yeah.
And then finally, when you unlock your 3 advanced abilities, whether from your advanced class or your hybrid class, you get your legendary ability after you've upgraded your crawler to level 5 or 6, and legendary abilities are really powerful. Do all sorts of things, like the hacker can take control of an entire settlement for like 10 minutes, I think, and do what they like within it, which obviously lots of mayhem. And beyond that, the pilot incrementally advances as each tech level of a crawler goes up, in that they just get some additional hit points and some additional ability points, effectively up to 20 max HP and 10 ability points.
Nice.
And that's the gist of pilots advancing, I think. You obviously get more equipment as well, and the equipment goes up in tech levels. But that's another way of advancing as well, and you get that every downtime cycle.
Then mechs is a bit more sort of what you'd expect. The key thing with advancement is that it's all based on the crawler. So as your crawler's upgraded, then the crawler gets from Tech 1 to Tech 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And as it hits those new tech levels, it unlocks new things both for pilots and mechs. Now, for mechs, you get all the Tech 2 chassis, systems, and modules are unlocked, so you can just craft those now in your crafting bays. Everything's kind of run from the crawler downtime cycle, basically. So all those different bays that we did in the character creation on the crawler all do different things. But specifically, the crafting bay, once it's Tech 2, allows you to craft all of those systems with the scrap that you bring back. And as soon as you can craft those things, you can now build new mechs with more powerful salvaging tools and weapons, and all the different stuff that we've got in the book. So the real sort of the actual advancement moment is always on the crawler. So it's the group advances as a whole. You don't have kind of like individual leveling, as it were. It's the whole group levels at the same time because you've all invested into the upgrade cost of the crawler.
Nice.
And then once that's available to you, you don't immediately just go, oh, okay, cool, my mech is now a T2 mech with all of the things. Over then the next sessions, you can now build those new things with the scrap that you bring back. So it's kind of like a gradual replacement of things. So even by the time you hit Tech 3, you might still have some Tech 1 gear because it's just stuff that you found useful. And the other thing to remember is whenever you take damage in the game, like, things can get blown off all the time. That's why you have to buy things like locomotion systems. Like you have to buy the legs for your mech. And you buy them because when you roll to see, if your mech gets damaged, you roll to see what gets destroyed. It might be your legs. And then that's how you get immobilized, And you're constantly also replacing those parts. But, even on a Tech 5 mech, you might have a Tech 1 locomotion system because you just want normal legs or, escape hatch or a comms module or what have you. So there's always a bit of a running sort of back and forth, but basically it's, like I say, as you upgrade that crawler, you get access to the new stuff and then you build the new stuff and rebuild your mech. And again, we were saying sort of one of the flaws is that people get kind of quite attached to the mechs, but really the best way of playing it in terms of like an outlook is you can kind of liquidate your mech at the end of every session into scrap and then rebuild it into something else. And so you can kind of always do that. And if you do it with that viewpoint, then as you level up, then, as the crawler levels up, you just can liquidate your old mech and use the scrap from that to buy the higher tech stuff. You just won't get as much for your money. So you're going to be on a more basic build. So, that's kind of, how that sort of mech advancement works, if that makes sense.
Yeah. To add to that, and I suppose the layer on top of that is, but it's a non-linear advancement, and it's communal advancement, even with the mechs. Though both of those ones are a little bit harder, I think, for especially players to get their head around. Not necessarily because of rules, but because of it's just most RPGs don't have those elements. So when I say non-linear, I mean, for example, if the GM level 1 of the game mediator throws a brawler mech, which is like a T3 mech at you, and you manage to defeat it and salvage it. You can then take it back to your base, repair it, and now you have a Tech 3 brawler mech. And anyone can pilot that. There's no limit. Like just because you're a pilot in a Tech 1 crawler doesn't mean you can't pilot any mech in the game. So that suddenly could give one player quite a powerful mech, and it feels quite it's a spike and it feels quite imbalanced. But the thing to keep in mind is like anyone can pilot it, so you're not necessarily like you can share that around. And the brawler's quite a straight combat mech, but there's also utility mechs like the Kraken, for example, which can go underwater, or there's a mech called the Terror, which can create like a biodome, which protects you from environmental effects like radiation or storms or whatnot.
Nice.
Which is to say, those spikes not only necessarily make one player who's controlling it have like a powerful combat ability, which is more obvious, but they can also give you a group as a whole a lot more utility if you take those mechs out. But there's a danger in doing it in that you can't, if they get damaged or destroyed, they're much more expensive to repair, and they cost a lot, and it might be better to spread that cost out and just salvage them. But it's a choice, and it's an interesting choice. So part of the advancement is not linear in that respect, but it can be. It's not usually how most RPGs are designed, I find, where you can't necessarily get these huge spikes in power sort of baked into the system. Or normally, if it does happen, it's often seen as a mistake. Like the GM will be like, "Oh no, I shouldn't have given everyone a +5, Vorpal sword. The campaign is over now."
Yeah.
So we baked that in just to upset GMs. I don't know.
That's awesome. I do like the thought of going and hot wiring a more advanced mech and just gunning it and getting back to base as fast as you can.
Yeah, exactly right. But yeah, they're also not like, technically it's not your mech, it's like everyone's mech. It's the Union part. But that's always a hard concept to get over. But yeah, I think the other thing with it is, again, a thing you don't it's again a tricky thing because it's not the normal RPG mindset, but the game is designed for you to then craft your mechs before the mission to suit the mission. So if you know you're going to be going over a really difficult terrain or there's a huge sea or whatever, you can all make Mazonas, and that's perfectly valid. Everyone could just make Mazona mechs and we could be the Mazona party and we just all hover over. I don't honestly see that a lot in actual play. Never happens, but it's technically the game. You could do that, but I'm not sure. But I'm not sure how to encourage that bit. Like, you can do it by the system, but again, players are a bit adverse to it because the more normal RPG mindset is you have your one. If you're a fighter, you're a fighter, and that's it. You're a fighter.
Yeah, like you are connected
you also
to your mech.
You do get emotionally attached. Yeah.
No, well, I think a lot of games kind of rely on that of like, this is your mech and you take care of it because I think a lot of it's a very like rare tech that like, only certain special people get to have mechs, and so I think some of that is a world building thing too. That
it's the thing with the world building for Salvage is, and particularly with the art. When I was commissioning Alex to do the art, the briefs were all kind of along the line of, okay, well, look, design this, but it has to look like it was originally an industrial tool, because like, as members of the Salvage Union, there are combat mechs in the game that you can salvage from corpos and things like that. But the idea is, particularly at level 1, that they're all utility mechs. Like, they're not designed for, they're not explicitly designed for combat. They were designed for other things and they've been repurposed. It's like, it's kind of like that Mad Max thing. You're not going around in sort of like tanks and APCs. You're going around in JCBs and trucks and things that have been retrofitted to, sort of perform that task. And so, yeah, in that regard, these are very much tools. They're not, they're not like, this hyper customized thing,
right.
Just,
and even if you do get a combat mech, like, you're getting it secondhand. You're certainly not the first person to own this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And probably not the first person that's going to die in it either, but
right.
Just wipe the seat. Fine.
How do you get the dead body smell out? It just lingers.
Yeah.
Should be somewhere in the manual, that.
Yeah.
It should be, actually.
Probably,
Just,
Amazing. Well, I think that pretty much covers the series. Thank you both so much for joining us to talk about Salvage Union and creating characters with us. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. And taking the time. No, really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun, actually, and it's really unique as a format as well. I really like it. Like, we've done a few podcasts and interviews and stuff, but like, we've never had. I don't think we've ever had one that's like gone this deep into kind of the
deep dive
mechanically,
was,
which I really like.
The deep dive was really fun, actually. Like, getting to talk about hyper specifics of design decisions and things like that, rather than just
I think that is the beauty of like getting to like focus on just character creation, especially, is like, okay, we can really and I love when we have designers on, because we can ask all of those nitpicky questions and be like, okay, but why?
Absolutely. Well, can you two remind us where we can find you online and the sort of things you have going on right now?
Sure. So our website is Leyline Press, where you can find a range of games, including Salvage Union. Our current project that we're in the midst of is the Salvage Union starter set. It funded on BackerKit late last year, and we're aiming to roll it out for late this year. And it's a sort of starter box set, which has a big campaign map, which is a bigger fold-out map of the wasteland. It has some pre-made characters and mechs, and it's designed as a sort of big intro kind of product, a bit cheaper than the core book as well, to kind of onboard you and give you a lot of like fun, even more accessibility, I'd say. So that's what we're sort of plugging away at the moment. In terms of where to find us on social media, you can find us at Leyline Press on Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And you can find us at Salvage Union as well on Blue Sky and Facebook and Instagram if you want to follow us. Follow Salvage Union specifically. We also have a newsletter, and to be honest, we have a Discord as well, which is probably our biggest community hub. If you just, I guess, search Salvage Union Discord, it should certainly come up. And there's links to it on our website as well. And that's really growing and good if you want to find a game of it as well and other like-minded players.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Thank you again, both of you, for sitting down with us. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. We'll be back next week.
Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can also be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at CreationCast, or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter, and I can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Our other host, Amelia Antrim, can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Ginger Reckoning. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast they originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game systems used and today's guests can also be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support our show, find us on Patreon. Get access to bonus episodes, exclusive merch, and much more at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time.